Welcome to this session today. I hope you're having a wonderful day. My name is Lisa Sanderson Cox, and Dr. Aditi Gupta and I are the new Associate Directors of Frontiers. Thank you. We are really excited to have had this entire day focused on mentoring and the paths that people are taking right now. There are so many different disciplines. One of the beauties of clinical and translational science is that we are talking about individuals from all sorts of specialties, all sorts of stages of their career paths, and we're all coming together, but we're focusing on mentorship because we want to have these paths be successful. We want to have very meaningful careers, and we're hoping that the things we're talking about today are contributing to that. Today, we right now are having this fantastic panel of individuals who are going to share some of their experiences, some of their expertise in mentoring. I'm going to let each individual introduce themselves, and we hope that this afternoon is going to be very conversational, that we have a lot of interaction among the panelists, but also a lot of interaction with the individuals in the audience. So please feel free to raise your hand. We'll bring you a mic. Please feel free to share some of your experiences, to ask some of your questions, and our panelists are going to do a wonderful job engaging us this afternoon. Let me go ahead and let you introduce yourself to begin. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. So I'm Peter Niedbalski. I'm at the University of Kansas Medical Center in the Division of Pulmonary Medicine. My main focus in research is pulmonary imaging using MRI. I'm a physicist by training. And then today, for the purposes of this panel, I'm going to be speaking sort of from the context of being a mentee as a junior faculty member, as well as sort of my initial forays into mentorship, having students and postdocs under me.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Sutkin. I believe I'm the lone clinician on the panel. I may be. I am a surgeon over at University Health just across the street. I'm a urogynecologist. I am a tenured professor in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. I am the director of the Surgical Innovation Lab. We are passionate about preventing surgical injuries. We want less patients to die in the operating room, and our team has a research mission towards preventing those injuries. Our other mission of our lab is the development of young researchers, and so mentorship is a passion of our lab, and it's the mission of our lab. I was recently given the Betty Drees Lifetime Award for Mentorship over at the School of Medicine, and which is one of the greatest honors that I could have. And it really is an honor to be part of this panel.
Hi, my name is Nuria Lara, and I work at UMKC and the school right now at the School of Medicine. And I am in that transition position of being a mentee and now being a mentor for medical students who want to do some research. And the area right now that I've been working on is in the rural medicine, and I'm being hired to help out the medical students in the San Joseph area.
Hello, everyone. My name is Frances Young. I'm a research associate professor in the School of Nursing at the University of Kansas on the medical campus. And my main area of research is on patient-centered health outcomes. And I look at the measurement of different scales and questions that are administered to patients and seeing if there's any cultural differences, if any comorbid conditions that might affect those responses to the questions. Currently, I just got back this morning from NIH in Bethesda, and I just received the Rising Star in Resilience award for research. And part of that is to look at what biomarkers of resilience are there, especially for those who are survivors of mass shootings. And so I'm looking into this, especially with the aftermath of the Kansas City Super Bowl parade, to see what we can do about, especially older adults who might be frail, vulnerable to these emotional distress, and of course all populations are vulnerable, but particularly because I'm a gerontologist and epidemiologist looking at this area now, One of the things that I do mentor specifically in the School of Nursing is latent variable modeling research. There's not a lot of people that are available to mentor and do that translational aspect of it. So I do a lot of that type of mentoring in the School of Nursing, as well as teaching clinical epidemiology to Doctor of Nursing practice students. I'm a Fulbright specialist currently. I have my tenure until 2026. So I just finished one Fulbright in Finland, and I looked at the quality of life of nurses after COVID-19.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephanie Miller-Hughes. I'm a tenured professor in the School of Medicine at Meharry Medical College in Nashville. For those who haven't heard of Meharry, it's an HBCU medical school, dental school, has some allied health professionals. So my research really focuses on translating evidence-based lifestyle interventions among African American women in terms of addressing those disparities, expertise in community engaged and patient-centered outcomes research. And so my mentor, I'm going to be speaking from this perspective of a mentor for a lot of postdocs who are currently getting training in community engaged research.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Smith, and I am currently a postdoc here at the Children's Mercy Research Institute in the Department or the Division of Health Outcomes Research. And I came from a music therapy clinical background and currently am invested in intervention design research, specifically with infants who have risk factors related to language development later in life. And prior to coming back to Kansas City to be a postdoc, I was an assistant professor in the music therapy program at Sam Houston State University. So I have some experience working with undergraduate and graduate students as a mentor, and then now am very much invested in my mentee role as a postdoc and as a TL1 scholar with the Frontiers Institution as well. So kind of have a little bit of both mentor-mentee sort of fresh on my mind.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panelists. We have a great group of panelists here and a great audience here. So I will say, let's make this interactive. For the audience, I would say try to think of questions you have as a mentor, mentee, somewhere in between. I know we all have that stage to where we are a mentor as well as a mentee. So whatever questions you have, think of that. And while you're thinking, I'll maybe ask the panelists a question. As we said, mentoring is a learning experience for both the mentees and the mentors. So do you mind sharing some experience, some memorable experience or a learning experience in your journey as a mentee or a mentor?
I'll start. I've mentored postdocs probably for the last 10 years or so, and I don't think we've had opportunities to have kind of formal evaluations. So we do our quarterly evaluations, in terms of, I do a lot of co-mentoring as well, right? And so one of the most impactful things that I think I heard was an informal conversation with a formal mentee probably about 2 years ago. And so she has become this magnificent scholar, and she writes prolifically. And so we were commenting on one day about her writing. And so she said, well, Dr. Miller-Hughes, she said, your feedback helped a lot, but here's the reason, and I think this is so important because people have different styles when you're helping people kind of with their writing. So I'm not one of those, I'm not gonna put a lot of red marks on it. I make a lot of comments. And so I say, this is what I would change, but this is why. And what she told me is that she said, and another mentor had the same approach. And what she said was, she said she literally studied our comments. So instead of she said, this is why they are saying it this way. And that helped her hone in her writing skills, right? And so she was already a terrific writer. But so I think, because you always wonder, and I take this, really seriously. And I think it's an honor to be a mentor. So if someone's investing their trust in me, I want to, if someone says, read this, I'm going to read this and I'm going to give is the best feedback I can. So that was really rewarding just to hear that that it actually helped, because we have not, and we probably do need to do some evaluation of our programs and our mentoring, but just knowing that it has helped someone, and that's what we're there to kind of help. And so that was something that was pretty recent and that was encouraging to me because I write a lot of comments, and so I'm glad someone found it helpful.
Yeah, so I guess while mentees need encouragement, mentors also need encouragement.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I think just going off of what you just said, the specific feedback that you receive is very helpful. And I think it might be difficult at first to receive as a mentee, but as you work through it, if mentors are giving you specific comments that you can include and change because they are experts in their area, that it does really benefit you in the long run and they want to see you succeed. So I feel that sometimes it is that balance of like, are you discouraged or are you encouraged by all of this? I think always to take that encouragement from knowing that in the future this will help you. I think it's not helpful when the mentor says, this is not clear. I mean, how many of us have received that kind of comment? And how is it not clear? What am I saying that's not clear in this statement that I can improve upon? Especially with your expertise in knowing what I'm doing, that is very helpful. I just really feel that that's one aspect that as mentors we can improve upon to make it even more helpful is to really give specific feedback.
So I think, yeah, so that's an excellent point. So comments by mentees and I guess comments by mentors, and then how are the mentees perceiving those comments? So I guess would you want your mentees to be more open to you about those comments, or how do you figure that out? You've given your feedback, and how is the mentee perceiving it? How do you figure that out?
I will kind of take a stab at that. As a mentee, I've had the joy of having mentors who provide really detailed, constructive feedback that has really inspired me and helped me get better at the writing or the thinking, whatever it is. And I've also had the experience of mentors who have provided comments to my work or things that I have put out there as a mentee that have shut me down, and knowing that that probably wasn't the intention, or hopefully not the intention of the mentor, but how I received that feedback. And it took a few rounds of this before we were able to have kind of that difficult conversation together of, well, how come you're not making progress? And, this isn't what I expect. And it came down to this conversation of, I was receiving the feedback that was being provided in a very negative light that then made me not want to continue, or made it really challenging for me to then dig into the project. So how the mentors structure that and how you have conversations with your mentees about the type of feedback and how they're receiving the feedback really does matter, because I spent a while in this sort of place of, oh my gosh, I can't do anything right. My mentor doesn't like anything that I do. And, the psychology of that thinking path then was detrimental to some of my progress at that point. So that it does matter very much to the mentees and their progress moving forward.
Yeah, and I would love to piggyback off of what's been said. And kind of highlight, as a mentee, thinking about the importance of knowing that the mentor is invested in your success, as Francis said, because it's a lot easier to stomach those difficult comments or those, that redlined grant when I know that my mentor, they're not just trying to trash my grant because it's terrible. They want me to get the grant funded, and so I think that communication of that care for you as a person, as a scientist, as a mentee, is really beneficial, and it helps the mentee to hear those criticisms and to build off of it rather than to shut down and to run from it.
Yeah, I have a specific example that happened to me. I was writing an abstract for a conference, right? And I circulated the abstract and to the different professors, and one of them came back to me and say, I'm sorry they had to say this, but this to me it looks like a laundry list, and like it doesn't have a story, but she gave me, like she say, I remember that specific time because I was in France on vacation. And when I received that email, it was like a cold, a cold shower, I guess. And then I edited the abstract, to the way that she wanted, and then I won an award. And I was like, okay, if I would have just, closed myself to those critiques and say, okay, I just want to leave my abstract the way it is, probably wouldn't get the award. But yeah, I mean, stomaching those comments and making it to a way that is positive towards you.
Realizing that your mentor has your best interest in it, but you may not feel it that way when you see a bunch of red on those Word documents, right? I mean, that's one thing which I still remember, the first time you give an edit and it's all red, and then the student looks at you and you're like, oh, the student feels that they're not capable of anything, they can't do anything. You have to remind them, it just looks red, but look at the comments, right? Is that something which you would say, yeah?
This discussion of the perspective of both mentors and mentees reminds me just of how I try to stay aware of how much I project as a mentor. In other words, I've had experiences as a mentee in my life that have shaped the way that I mentor people, but my mentee may have different expectations or wishes than I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
And going off of what you said, my mentor at Harvard Medical School used to say, red means love. So more track changes you have, the more you can incorporate.
Nice one.
I'm curious with the audience right now, who right now would consider themselves a mentee? Okay. Who right now is currently acting as a mentor? Okay. And how many people are also engaged in some sort of peer mentorship? Okay, so this is, I think, gives you a snapshot about how we have really a mixed audience. And so I appreciate that you're already pulling in sort of perspectives of mentors, your own past experience as mentees, and sort of speaking to the real mixture that we have in the audience. When you think about our limited period of time, I mean, you could have a graduate degree in mentorship, right? We could have a semester's course clearly in mentorship, but we have this little limited period of time today. Preparing or thinking about what you hope the audience might walk away with today, does something come to mind for you as one of those real gems that you've experienced, that you've sort of built over your time, and something that you would like to be sure to share today?
Well, for me, and I've been hearing this today, that is, not only have just one mentor, but have several. And I learned that more formally probably a year ago, and it was with a person. It was a person who actually wasn't in science, but in business. So she would say, she used to say, have like in a company, have a board of trustees that can guide you through life or through the specific time in your life. So, for me, that has been a gem. Just having, the thought that not only one person can fill all those roles, but multiple persons in that specific life.
And do you have advice on how to develop those really meaningful mentorship teams? Is it about multiple individual relationships? Is it about good communication within the team? How do you approach that?
I would say, if I go to a conference or if I attended a talk, I seize that person and I go and introduce myself to that person, and they will be open. for this person that it was in business, I actually asked, would you mind guiding me through this process? And like she would say, she said, yeah, of course. And and I wasn't, I didn't know that she was going to be that open, but it has been that relationship has helped me through a transition. So I would say just ask, like that's how I would approach. Yeah.
Dr. Sutkin, for instance, I was thinking about in your clinical experience with mentorship, do you like to take a team approach, or how do you recommend building the best mentoring experience for your mentees?
I think the team approach has benefits, but all of my most rewarding mentor-mentee relationships are one-on-one still, right? It's still a mentee coming to me with a very specific question, and I always recommend, have that one specific question, and then seeking that advice, and then letting it germinate from there.
So going from that one-on-one relationship, how many mentees can a mentor have at one time?
Well, I think it's up to the mentee to decide if this might be their mentor. I don't think it's like a formal, sometimes it's not a formal, will you be my mentor, proposal, right? But it could be that, for a certain, K awards, F awards, different types of grant mechanisms, you will need to do the formal process. But for personal and professional, sometimes it is just you have sought out these people and you've had your own, in your mind, your board of trustees that you can go to seek guidance. But I think that for the mentee, how many mentors would you have on a board? It will be, is it between 6 to 12? It depends on how many facets of guidance you need, whether it be, relationships, whether it be professional, and there's different aspects and domains that you might need guidance in.
So a mentee-mentorship relationship, I think, is an evolving one. So initially, let's say you start with 6 or 8 mentors, and then you realize, okay, I was thinking I'm going to do this, this, and this, but now I realize I need to be more focused on this. So how do you approach your mentors with that? That now I was thinking of doing this, but maybe now I need to focus more on this. Do you feel open enough to approach your mentors with those questions? How do you feel that your mentors react to it? And if you're a mentor, then what do you think of your mentee approaching you with this kind of a question?
I think in my own experience as a mentee, I sort of, I guess you could say, silo my mentors in a certain sense, that I've kind of got an overall mentor, a primary mentor who I turn to for, here are my big questions about career development. Here are my big questions about what do I do next. And then I have some, they're not really sub-mentors, but you could think of them in that sort of sense that, my primary mentor doesn't know anything about hyperpolarized xenon MRI, my main focus of study, but this person over here at Duke University I can reach out to, and he can mentor me in the specifics of this scientific path. And so at least from my own personal perspective, I find it really valuable to kind of have one person that's kind of overarching, handling the big picture, and then have these other mentors that are kind of helping me with these smaller facets, internal politics, this particular scientific field, just those smaller things, while kind of, and of course getting some of the big picture from each of those smaller mentors as well, but kind of, you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, of course. So, kind of having one person that you really turn to, and then, you kind of subspecialize.
I'll follow up to that. Similarly, in developing a K award, which I'm working on right now, the framework of what is your research, what are your goals, your career goals, and then putting that into a spreadsheet or a matrix and being really systematic about finding the expertise and the people who can mentor you in those specific research aims, strategies, methodologies, with that addition of just the overall climate of kind of getting to that next phase in your career. So having mentors who are at multiple different stages in their career, and who have that targeted expertise that relates or maps directly onto what your goals in research and future careers has been really helpful to me in how do I expand my mentor network as I move forward.
I think what you just said about having people at different stages in their careers is so valuable. You know, a lot of us, and myself included, you know, my primary mentor is a professor who's been tenured for years. And it's great. I learned so much from him. But also, it's been years since he went through the tenure process. It's been years since he tried to get promoted from assistant to associate. And so having these people who are a little bit more my immediate peers who, you know, maybe just got promoted 2 years ago or, you know, last year, I find to be extremely valuable to kind of get that recent expertise and, oh yeah, I just went through this, here's what you need to look for. And then also, of course, as I just said, you know, also having the big picture of, you know, what's coming down the road. But I think what you said about having multiple different stages as mentors and just extremely valuable.
I want to ask you a little bit about a formal mentor-mentee relationship versus like a curbside mentor-mentee relationship. As mentees, did you have, when you were mentees, I guess, did you have these relationships with other people who are not technically your formal mentors on your K or your grant, but you were still getting a lot of help with them, from them? And how do you put these mentors in your big, mentorship umbrella?
Well, go ahead, please.
I'll say as a mentee, so I've had career development awards where I've had a formal mentoring team, but I can think of, now that I think about it, my department chairs have never been a part of my official mentoring teams, but they've always been kind of the informal mentors because, you know, you have your yearly evaluations and all of those different things. And so they have been the people who will stop by my office, just how's it going? We can, you know, it's in the parking lot conversation. And so thinking back, I always knew there was support there. It was never like I go to them for this one thing, but they created this environment where if it was just something, I could just drop in. So my chairs have always been that really good kind of informal mentors. And I just kind of thinking through that, I've been fortunate in that way that I've had those that have been, you know, I know you have a formal mentoring team, but, you know, let me know what I can do. And so just having them to say that, even though they are my chair, and, you know, so that was helpful to having kind of those informal mentors.
So you don't have to stay restricted to your formal mentorship team. It's okay to go and ask for other help from others.
Right.
Yeah, my advice, though, is don't rely on that. I mean, certainly informal mentorship can be very productive, but when you really need something from a mentor, you know, send that email, set up that meeting, ask that really specific question that you need.
Yeah. I guess a follow-up to that, so I guess in your first meeting, how do you set up goals and how do you approach this mentor-mentorship relationship? So somebody writes you an email, you know, can you help me with this? What next?
Well, I think it's really important about kind of managing expectations too, because, you know, people are seeking you out because they need assistance, as he said, in some particular area. So I try to make it clear to ask, you know, what is it that you need specifically from me? So we can have a conversation about, am I the best person to do that? Because if it's really important and you need it, we need to make sure that I'm the right person. I was like, okay, yeah, we can do this. And so that's something that I think is really important before I just say yes or no. And because I don't think about it as, I like mentoring. For me, it's not a checkbox thing. I feel like you should do it in academia, but I do it because I enjoy it. And so it's really important that, you know, there's something I get from this as well, right? It's a reciprocal relationship. And so I've been the benefactor of this, and it's really important. So I want to be a good mentor. So I want to make sure that I can provide what the person is looking for. And if I can't, I will be willing to help find someone else because it's about them in this moment. So that's important for me.
Can I ask, if you are in the role of primary mentor for someone, your new mentor is going to come to their first meeting with you. Maybe you've had some email, conversations, or you met them when they were interviewing, but this is really your first sit down together. And for the mentee, they have not learned everything about you, your approach and your philosophy of mentorship. What do you want them to walk in with, or what do you want to make sure is communicated in that first meeting together?
I mean, I think for me, it goes back to kind of expectations. In community engaged research, we do something called a give-get grid, and we've mapped these out with community partners, and we almost do something similar I do with my postdocs. I mean, there's some things that you can expect from me, because I also have to be accountable in the relationship, so it's not this one-sided. And so we kind of go through this exercise of, what is it that I will do? What is it that you will do? And we kind of talk about that during that first minute. Is this reasonable? So I kind of take that approach, because it's a give and get on both ends, I think.
And just to add to that, just have that document live online as a shared document so that you can refer to it, and just have an ongoing agenda and just follow-up of minutes that you can refer to. I think it's very helpful how many times we're in a mentor-mentee meeting where, didn't we just discuss this? Or didn't we talk about this a while ago and we're kind of talking about it again? So just having that to refer back to on what date we talked about this, and having that live document either through our OneDrive or through Teams, or maybe through, and then just to take a step back really quick, it's just that there's a lot of times when I get emails that, hey, I want to meet with you, but I don't know what times they want to meet because I can't see their Outlook, and then I just think that there are some tools that we can have as basic ways to have that communication going, instead of going back and forth about that. It's just go ahead and look at their Outlook calendar and figure out what their schedule is. And if they're an outside mentor, now we, as I don't know if everybody uses this, but bookings.com or bookings is part of our tools that we can use through our institution at KU Med Center. So we can have external links for people to see a similar thing like Calendly, that people can book times with you. And so it just makes it more efficient that way for the communication. So having things that are live online is very helpful.
I guess, so now you've had the first meeting, you've set some expectations, so now what's the next step? How often is too often, and how much is too less? What's a good frequency of your meetings?
I'm a big believer that the frequency has to be driven by the mentee, right? The mentee should decide how often they need that mentorship and should explicitly state it. And so I'll tell the mentee that that's my expectation, that they'll set that schedule.
And I'm curious, in the audience, when you're thinking about walking into that first meeting, what have been some of your experiences? What questions do you have to our expert panel that you would love to learn from? Either how to do something differently than maybe what you've currently been doing, or what you'd want to know before you walk in, or any question about that sort of early relationship building. As Dr. Sutkin was just sort of saying, the mentee really driving some of these questions, but at the same time, are you in a position where you need to learn more about what kinds of questions should I be asking? How should I be approaching scheduling a meeting? How should I be approaching knowing what our expectations are? Any questions or thoughts from the audience?
I found for my mentees that it's been helpful to use career development plans, and I don't know if the other mentors have used this, but to me, I ask them to get prepared for that first meeting with a career development plan, because that helps me then understand where they're coming from, what stage they're in. And in that career development plan, I like to look at their short-term goals and their long-term goals. And to me, somebody filling that out, getting ready for the first meeting, demonstrates to me that they're committed to the mentee part of this as well. But I'd like to hear comments from the other mentors.
I just have a question. Do you have a template for that?
Yes, we have a template, and Dr. Niedbalski, you can attest to that as well. But it is expected for all, as you know, on K awards and so on, that they have an IDP. It's an equivalent to an IDP for the Ks.
Sounds very useful.
Yeah, just speaking as one of Dr. Castro's mentees, the career development plan was extremely helpful because it did help set Dr. Castro's expectations when I started meeting with him, and also just helped me to formulate my own thoughts and to think deeply about, well, what are my short-term goals and what are my long-term goals and how do I accomplish that? And what do I need from Dr. Castro to get there? And what do I need that Dr. Castro can't provide, so who do I need to talk to get those other things? So I heartily endorse Dr. Castro's suggestion of the career development plan. As a mentee, it's been very valuable.
I think we've used those as well, and I think when I've been the primary mentor, that's something we'll do, probably a second thing that we'll do, because then what we're looking at, because that piece of that plan where they really kind of talk about their skills in different areas, how confident or how they kind of rate it, and then as a primary mentor, you can work with them to figure out, because sometimes when I'm the primary mentor, I'm also responsible for helping them kind of fill out the other people in the mentoring team, and so having someone to look at that with, kind of where they feel they need some additional skills and expertise, and so that IDP is really, really important for that and helping. And sometimes I find out this is sometimes people's first even attempt to kind of map this out, so it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I typically try to do, give as much assistance during that part as I can, and kind of giving templates and other examples of how other people, that seems to help people, because it can be a little overwhelming for some people.
In terms of the mentorship meetings, what do you feel about meeting individually with all the mentors versus meeting the team together or doing both? What's your take on how the meetings should be conducted?
I'll put in my experience primarily as a mentee here, in that typically about once or twice a year I meet with a full mentor team, and I find that to be extremely valuable because maybe I'm getting different messaging from one mentor and from another, and then that way they're both in the same room and can hear the justification. It's not going through a third party me that maybe doesn't quite relay that information appropriately. So I do find the combined meetings valuable, but more than once or twice a year, I don't know that there's much value beyond that. I think really the face-to-face, one-on-one, half hour of dedicated time with the mentor is that's where the magic really happens in my perspective.
Can you speak a little bit more about building trust in a relationship, particularly maybe in the first year of working with a mentee?
Well, I have two words, Hunger Games. Well, we already had lunch, so it's not that relevant right now, but as I don't know how many of you have seen that movie. So have you seen the latest? Yes. So the first thing they say is build trust between a mentor and a mentee. It's very important for the mentor to show up and for their mentee in order for the mentee to trust that they want the best for them, that they want the best career path for them. And it's not just to use them for something that for their gain, but really for everybody to be able to move forward, because the legacy as a mentor that is left through the mentee is very important, and that will continue on, because I think having generations of mentorship is very important. And I think with the trust issue, it really is, once a month I'll take my mentees out for lunch. I'll treat them, and just to let them know that I care about them, their overall well-being, and also that they can go back to the research and realize that, I'm doing this not just for the benefit of our lab, our group, but really for to move the field forward. I think that helps with that team building that trust.
It's interesting, as a young faculty person, I hear stories about how things used to be very cutthroat, or collaborative science is really coming to its own these days. And I wasn't around, I don't know these things for sure, but it sounds to me as if in today's academic environment, things are much more collaborative, much more focused on the whole person. And I think that's something that I've experienced and that I'm very grateful for, is that, and I think is very important in mentor-mentee relationships, is that it's about the whole person. It's not just, we want you to get your R because then you're an independent scientist and that's what matters. It's, well, how are your kids doing today? You know, did your daughter had that piano recital? Did she do well in that? Just that acknowledgement and that notice that somebody cares for the whole person, I think is really valuable. And I think in today's climate of recognizing how important that is really beneficial. And I think it's something that all of us as mentors and mentees can continue to work to do a better job of recognizing that it's not just a potential K award sitting across the desk from us. It's an individual who has a wife, who has kids, or what have you. And I think it can be really helpful to build that trust to get to know somebody on a personal level.
I want to ask you a question about that. As a mentor, a lot of times I'll ask then people who I'm meeting with for the first time about their personal lives, about their families, about their kids. But does anybody see those questions as invasive or too personal when you first meet a mentor?
That's a really good question. And certainly, I suppose it depends on the individual. For me, I love nothing more than talking about my kids. So, when I go to a meeting with Dr. Castro and he asks about my daughter Bernadette, that's my favorite part of the meeting. And then, okay, yes, we do need to talk some science. We need to talk some career development. But for me, certainly it's not too invasive, but I can certainly see how it would be. And so I think that's something that a mentor does need to be careful about.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, I've had personal information shared that I didn't feel was appropriate and was used against me. And so I think that's also something as mentors, when we do engage in that type of conversation, just to be careful to guard it. And then as mentees, I would like to be able to freely share with my mentor some of these personal aspects, but given those, you don't know when that happens, and I don't know if it's intentional or not intentional, but sometimes those are things to be cautious of.
There's a question.
I'd be interested in hearing differences in that response between males and females, because before I came here, not saying where I came from, I think that those questions as a female about your family life and other details about your personal life were used against you, because it was considered and told to me multiple times you can either be a successful scientist or a successful mother, basically. And so I think sometimes the responsibilities are seen in a different way, so that males may not experience the same type of, I guess, microaggressions. So I'd be very interested to hear whether revealing personal information about your life, your family life, or you feel that it's a different scenario depending on whether you're male or female.
I really appreciate that question, and it's something that I've noticed in my role as a mentor that I do have a couple of female mentees. And certainly, as I was getting to know them, it was a challenge for me to know, what do I ask? What can I ask? Because for me personally, I want to know about their family life and how things are going at home, and because I care about them as a person, but I also don't want to be invasive. And so I think it's a really delicate thing. Speaking as a man, I do not want to be seen as intrusive or as asking questions that are going to be seen as, are you trying to manipulate your female employee, your female mentee? And so I think it's really delicate, and it's something that certainly as a young faculty, I have a long way to go and a lot of things to learn. But yeah, I'm very interested to hear what the other panelists have to say, because I do think it's really important, those potential dynamics there.
One thing I try to do is, if I'm going to ask about family, I talk about my own family, right? To show that the thing I'm asking about is also important in my own life. But I don't think that necessarily addresses career suppression. That's a serious thing.
I think one experience that I've had similarly is in a mentee-mentor relationship is how willing is the mentor to share their personal experiences or aspects of their personal life if they're going to ask me those same questions. But a lot of times we, in my kind of current situation, will start off a meeting with more of an open-ended share, which sort of leaves it up to, do I want to share something that's happening on a manuscript I've been working on, or something that is more career relevant, or do I want to share something that is more personal to me or sort of outside the work environment without that sort of expectation that you're going to share, family life or personal information in that moment, which still helps kind of create that kind of open space for sort of sharing what's important to you or things that are on your mind, but it doesn't have to be overly personal.
So I guess where do you draw the line? And is that line different for different relationships? Do you have to build that trust and then define the line and see how much trust you've built and then define where that line lies for that relationship?
I'm still an open book. So despite all the things that have happened and what I've shared, I still very open to sharing with everyone. So I think that there are some things that I would like to be more cautious about in the future is like kind of more of my background information. I think that was something that people were saying like, oh, due to assumptions about your like race, ethnicity, that this is typically what happens and, things like that. But that's why I don't really like to ask those questions about where are you from or what's your, ethnicity. I don't like that because I want to know the person for who they are, because the customs and traditions they're different for everybody. Even if there is shared, the degree of, looking at them or doing them is different for everyone. So I just feel like sometimes going through the cultural sensitivities, we may have these assumptions that might be there that might not be relevant to certain, your mentees or mentors.
Yeah, it goes both ways, even for mentors, right? I mean, the mentees could ask you questions which you think may not be appropriate, correct? Yeah.
Hi, this is Baki Agbas from Kansas City University. I have a question for the panelists. It's a real-life question that how do you handle developing the romance between two mentees and the mentee mentors? Have you experienced or have you witnessed, or what do you suggest? Because I've been reading lately quite a bit of the literature that this thing is happening. So then what is your advice? Thank you.
Well, I just want to drop the mic on this one, but that's loaded. But I appreciate that. So I haven't had witnessed this, but it sounds like if you are someone who is aware that this is happening, maybe that's something that at the institution, that may be one of those things that we get HR involved or other folks that, and I don't know how you report these things. People have different ways of reporting these things if they're known to be true, but it sounds like if you are the person who's seeing this happening in a mentor-mentee relationship, maybe there's some reporting that needs to happen. If you're part of that relationship, I'll let someone else take that one. I don't know.
I agree. It should always be reported and handled delicately, I'm sure.
Does that, I'm sorry, I realize there's a question right here, but just adding on that, does that mean that as mentors, you want to keep your eyes open for helping your mentees learn all sorts of areas of professional conduct and boundary setting and like aspects of mentorship that are beyond what are the aims of your K or beyond let me give you my expertise on this subject criteria? Do you feel like mentorship on more professionalism, some other areas of real career development and growth are part of your job as a mentor, or is that something that if it's not on the page of the career development plan, it's really not on the page?
I think sticking to the career development plan is the best way to navigate through that. And I do believe it's as much as the mentee wants to inquire in terms of what their advice they want from you is. I'm not a believer in offering too much, especially when it's personal. So if it is related to the career development plan, then I would stick to that.
Well, and I think that's a really good mentor answer, because you don't want to offer more than the mentee asks for. They may not be ready to receive it, and that may burn a bridge. But putting on the mentee hat, that's most of what I want to get from a mentoring relationship oftentimes. I mean, how do I navigate this faculty position and do the things, because I can read in a book how to do this aspect of science, or I can read a guide for writing a grant and learn those things. And certainly there's, I can learn a lot from the mentoring as well, and I'm not poo-pooing that in any way, but a lot of times as a mentee, what I'm most interested in is some of those intangible things, those sort of more subtle, here's how to be a professional things. But I totally agree that it's not really appropriate for a mentor to offer those things unsolicited. I think for a mentee to ask for them, though, is a very valuable thing.
Your question?
Yeah, it's a very great discussion. I appreciate the panels. We are talking about the relationship between the mentors and mentees. That's a wonderful relationship for lifelong. Previously, they had a very good mentors, like that's called a guru. Most of the people know that what is meant by guru. Guru is nothing but mentor. GU means ignorance, and RU means dispels. So the one who dispels all the ignorance of the mentees, that is the real guru. The good guru or good mentor is a gift for the students or mentees. So in this way, I want to clarify with a small story about that. Like the mentor invited all the mentees who were trained from this mentors. So one day he invited for the tea party. So nowadays we are living in the fast and furious life, right? So more stress, more depression. So in this way, in order to clarify those things, the mentor want to give the proper guidance to lead the life, that is the personal life, as well as the professional life. Both career development is including everything. So for that, he invited for the tea party, and he put on different size of the cups and different colors of the cups on the table, but he poured the coffee in it. So whoever came over there, all the students or mentees, they were looking for the cups. Hey, that color is good, this color is good, a size is good, or the shape is good. But they didn't focus on the coffee inside. So the mentor was observing everything. Oh, okay, you guys are looking at that external, like the epigenetics, right? So you guys are never looking into the coffee. The coffee is nothing but the life. The shape or the cups, the color is nothing but the external things, right? Like who has more grand or who has more like a car or the house and everything. So comparing, that is the main reason for the stress. So if it is like that, you cannot enjoy your life. That means you are not enjoying your coffee, right? So this is the way the mentor will guide. When the mentee is going in the wrong direction, they have to guide in the proper direction. So in order to avoid the extra stress, we have to focus on the present life. This is the way you have to lead your life in the professional oriented as well as in the personal aspect. This is what I learned from my mentor. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Comments from the panel? One of the key things that came to me from that is just that concept of guidance, and I appreciate you thinking about to what degree is it guidance that is asked for, which always a little bit makes me wonder, if you don't know, you don't know to ask. And so helping mentees identify maybe some of their needs that they are not perhaps initially aware of, or other approaches to guidance.
I think it's a good approach in those types of situations where it's not strictly about, the career development plan. I mean, if a mentee is sitting in front of me and there's something I feel like I can give some guidance on, I do ask permission. Based on what you said, I really have some thoughts about this. Are you okay if I kind of share? So it's, you know what I mean? So I ask permission to give that. So it's not, I'm forcing this on. And if they say no, I just wanted you to listen, then I know what my role was there. And so I just, because I think that's the thing. Sometimes they do want guidance. Sometimes they really just need to listen. And I want to piggyback on something you said about we're mentoring professionals who are, they're people. And so if a mentee is sitting in front of me and it's clearly they're distressed and stressed about something, and the meeting was to talk about their research strategy, I'm going to scratch the research strategy and say, I can tell you're not seeming like yourself today. Do you want to take this time to talk about something else? And just leave it open. If they say, no, let's power through. But I can't ignore that there's a person here, and we're living in a world where people are going through things that we have no idea. And we find out things like, oh my God, I never knew. But these are people first in front of you. So I think this whole thinking about the whole person is super, super important. And people need to be supported now in so many ways. And we don't know, we make assumptions about people that they're supported in some ways, and we may be the support. So I think just being mindful of who and how people are presenting in front of you is really important.
I guess to piggyback on that, has any one of you have foreign students as your mentees? Do you feel that there's a little bit more need to help them with their life or other problems? For instance, if they don't have any family around, I guess they have a car which breaks down, now what do you do? I mean, obviously they can't focus on research if they don't really have a means of transportation or some other, just for an example. What do you do then? Like, do you feel that you need to help them a little bit more in life?
Yeah. Well, I haven't had a mentee, an international student, but I was an international student. And not recently, but when I was doing a postdoc, there was another student coming into the States, and what her mentor did, it was ask me to guide her, basically. So in terms of, like outside things in the lab.
Yeah.
And, like out of that came like she's one of my best friends now. So yeah, I mean, the mentor didn't involve too much on that aspect, but asked someone else who knew the ropes and to show her the ropes. Yeah. So that's one way that a mentor can help.
I think something that stood out to me from our wonderful keynote this morning is your role as a mentor is not to provide or be everything to your mentee, but know where to look or where to refer that person, right? They're a person first, to get some of the supports or the help that they need, and to convey that you are listening to them and you understand that there are other needs that need to be addressed in order to move forward in the academic or the research purpose of your mentor-mentee relationship. But let me help you find access to the support that you need from these other resources.
Yeah, I think the resource that is available through the institution is very helpful. So if it's EAP, Employee Assistance Program, being able to refer them to that webpage, I think they can navigate through that. I think as leadership or chairs of departments, that once in a while during faculty meetings is to kind of provide some of this information to faculty, and so they know where to refer their mentees or students. I think it just, even if it's just briefly, it's helpful just to have that information.
And I think there is a difference, there's obviously a difference between those things that the person needs, that maybe they need to go through the employee assistance to get, and also, these sort of ancillary things that help a person feel like they're wanted. I think back to my postdoc advisor, and every year for Thanksgiving, he just hosts a Thanksgiving dinner at his house for the international students because they don't typically have family to go to. Maybe Thanksgiving isn't part of their traditions, but that way they have something to do that day. They get a nice meal out of it. They get to hang out with some of their friends, and it's just a way that he takes the extra step to make his mentees and his mentees' friends feel valued as people in the city and in the group. Yeah,
as a Fulbright, I had the opportunity to mentor students abroad in Finland about the latent variable modeling, and to be able to help them apply it to their data or use the models that most would be relevant. And then in exchange, I felt like I was mentored by them about their culture, about the food, about navigating through the city, through the country. You know, it was a reciprocal relationship in that way, and it was, you know, wonderful, because I think as everyone may or may not be able to be in really somebody else's shoes, being in a different country and being vulnerable in that way allows us to really be able to experience what it's like to be different.
Yeah. So what are the signs of a mentor-mentee relationship not working? Like, how do you know that, okay, it started off fine, but now it's not working? What are the signs for that?
I think when the attitude is different, and the tone, and not showing up on time, missing meetings, those are flags that things are not working well.
I just want to add that some of my mentees have not shown for meetings, and it's been okay because I've had long-term relationships with them. I know that they're going through something, and a lot of those relationships have come back. Like they've come back to the next meeting, in other words. Missing a meeting is not the biggest red flag.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, with clinical rotations, does it get harder for some of the clinicians to come for those meetings? I mean, it's not the intention to miss the meeting, but they end up missing the meeting. Do you feel that it's maybe different for clinicians?
Well, I mean, and it's always nice if they'll say, I'm sorry, I've got a patient or I've got a surgery, so I can't make it, and they reschedule. But I think I'm talking about when mentees go through a tough time in their life, and it's just not a good communication time for them. I wait for them to come back.
Yeah, I think if it's a pattern of not communicating why they're missing the meetings, I think that's the key to that issue.
What about problem solving with that? So for instance, your mentor-mentee relationships are fantastic, but one of your colleagues has maybe a mentor-mentee relationship that they're struggling with. Maybe the mentee comes and says something that they're concerned about, or maybe your mentor is questioning how well this is working out. What are some potential solutions for someone who might be in a mentor-mentee relationship that isn't as productive and rewarding as they wish it was?
Well, I think a lot of people as mentors maybe haven't started off with some of the steps that we've talked about in this panel and that we heard about in the keynote of establishing what your goals are, establishing expectations, and doing some of those baseline things. And I think if those things haven't been done, I think it's easy for something that maybe was organic and just fluid at the beginning, maybe it's gotten stale and it's not working as well as it was. Well, now it's time, let's go back and formalize these things and make sure we have concrete expectations and we know what our goals are with this relationship. And if this relationship isn't going to meet the goals, well, then we can feel okay just ending it right here and now. But I think I would suspect that in a lot of cases, some of the friction or some of the difficulties might just be because some of the baseline things that we've talked about today haven't been followed.
Is there a question? No.
I was just going to add, I also think it's okay to acknowledge that not every mentor-mentee relationship is going to be successful, and having that conversation when things aren't going the way that you hope or the way that you expect, that it's okay for those relationships to end, or to encourage your mentee to move on to a different mentor or help them find a different mentor, or as a mentor to gracefully accept that you are not able to meet the needs of your mentee, and that they may want to seek a different mentor on their own. So that's okay. Not every relationship always works.
I think that if the mentee is paid in terms of you're also not only their mentor but their boss, there is that evaluation process that you go through. And when you go through the evaluation form together, ask them, how would you rate yourself on these, aspects? So, because oftentimes we have to turn in this form also to whichever office to continue the funding for them. if they're not fulfilling the original document, like the grid that you described in the beginning, then what can we do to correct that? Let's work on this together. I think it's just a formalized document, but it also allows for flexibility through communication in terms of what we can do to improve the relationship. And if at that point we decide it's not working anymore, then how do we move on? And maybe there's a better fit for a mentor and boss.
I would like to add that it's also okay just to let it fade out without talking about it too. And that's just because mentor-mentee relationships, they have natural ebbs and flows. And so sometimes it might seem like it's in that little ebb or whatever. And actually it's just kind of taking a break. I have plenty of mentees who I kind of thought it was over because we didn't really have a meeting for about a year or so. And then all of a sudden they had a need and I was the answer to that need. And I'm glad they came back.
Thoughts or experiences from the audience? Questions about this, or that burning question that you haven't asked your own mentor but you'd love to ask the panel? What's worked? What's not worked? Go ahead.
Hi, sorry, just a question for anyone on the panel. And this is just kind of a general question, but I'm just curious if as a mentee, you had any pearls of advice that you've taken forward and continue to pass on to your mentees now as a mentor?
I guess I'll jump in with a couple things. The first two things that immediately come to mind. One is come prepared to your mentor-mentee meeting. Because the mentors, they're busy. They've got, projects and grants and progress reports and all this stuff on their mind. And sometimes they might not recall exactly where you are. So if you have an agenda for your meeting planned out, that helps the meeting to be much more productive. It keeps the mentor happy because you're not feeling, the mentor's not feeling like you're wasting their time. The mentee, you're not feeling like you're wasting their time. So coming prepared for mentor-mentee meetings, I think is really valuable and really helpful. And then the other things is just acknowledge that one person might not have all the answers, and that it's good to diversify. It's good to have multiple mentors, so that you can learn from multiple people, because one person can't know everything, and so not putting all your eggs in one basket, but kind of diversifying and making sure that you're able to get what you need without putting too much on one person.
So I was thinking about your question, and I have my book that I wrote, Measurement and the Measurement of Change, and this is with a mentor that I had. Denise Pollitt is one of the kind of, who wrote the Bible on research methods in nursing research. Those who are nurses in the room, would you agree? Or I see nods. So it was very interesting because she sought me out because of my expertise in measurement and also working on psychometrics, that she really wanted to write this book, but she wasn't an expert in this area. So as a mentee, I worked with her and got to publish this book. So kind of my pearl of wisdom to you is just take the opportunities, like say yes to these opportunities, because it might seem daunting, it might be a lot of work. It was a lot of work. A lot of I didn't realize her style was very strict in terms of timelines to be ahead of schedule. And so kind of learning that process is very important. So I would say we didn't have a formalized, this is how we are going to work together in our timeline. But as we worked together, I was able to adapt and learn about that and to successfully be able to publish this book together. And it's been very helpful in terms of learning that process and be able to do more publications.
Yeah, for me, it would be ask. Don't be afraid to ask. And this advice comes from a person who's an introvert. So I will just give you advice to, if you see a person that you might want to learn something, go ahead and reach out to them, and don't let the ball drop. Just keep bouncing the ball at your end, basically.
The best thing I learned as a mentor was to take notes at the end of a meeting. so that the next time we had a meeting, I could ask the right questions about what happened.
I think what's important, and I've tried to take the responsibility on this myself a little bit more lately, because sometimes, you meet with your mentees, and maybe there's some things to do for the next 2 weeks or something like that. And so I've had mentees to come back and have been stalled because there was something they didn't really know. And so I really do this. It's something that's used in motivational interviewing about confidence scaling, about how confident are you that you can do what we're thinking about. And that kind of brings up people having barriers around that thing, then we can address that. Because mentors are busy, but mentees are too. And so sometimes I've found that my mentees will come back 2 weeks later and they go, Dr. Miller-Hughes, you're really, really busy and I didn't want to bother you about this. But if we address some of those things, like, how are you feeling about doing this over the next 2 weeks? And we can go ahead and address it there. And also, I think as mentees, sometimes you don't need 30 minutes. There may be like something that will require your mentor to answer in 2 minutes. And shoot an email. Maybe it's outside of the formal meeting. And I say this because I've had mentees who are going through things that really could have been. They were like, "But you're busy, and I didn't want to bother you," but it derailed them, or it delayed their timeline because they were. And I know, because we have this, we're all really, really busy. But I think we have to balance that and help people know I'm really, really busy. But if you need help and I got 2 minutes. Just shoot me an email, because it could delay you for a month, and it's only going to take me 2 seconds to respond. So, we're all really, really busy, and I think kind of helping that balance where they feel it's okay to, access something that may seem, they think it's so minor for us, but it's really important for them. And if it's important to them, it's important. It should be important to us.
So we have be prepared, take notes so you can follow up, ask questions, say yes to opportunities, identify barriers and communicate. And another pearl of wisdom?
I would say listen, really practicing those active listening skills when you're in those meetings. It's always been really impactful to me when a mentor sort of hears the between the lines or picks up on something that I'm really excited about and can sort of help me snowball that idea or kind of move forward with that thought. So, really listening and conveying that care for me as the mentee and my progress in sort of those everyday weekly meetings has been really impactful.
Thank you. I guess other comments, thoughts from the audience? Any polls from the mentors in the audience?
Well, we're thrilled to have you with us today. Thank you so much for your time, and please join me in thanking our panelists for the time that they've given us today.